And before I start reading, I just want to say thank you so much to Books Are Magic for having me. This place was my second home for almost 3 years. Thanks so much to Mike and Emma and the whole staff of wonderful booksellers there. So I'm going to read from the very beginning of Cheat Day, and then Jamie and I are going to talk. So, Chapter 1. We started the Radiant Regimen on Valentine's Day. I decided to cook a nice dinner. Leg of lamb and a salad with roasted acorn squash and walnuts and some lemony dressing. Why don't you make that couscous my mom gave you? David asked. He was keeping me company, trying to catch up on his endless work emails. We spoke to each other from across the kitchen island, the messy surface where we looked at our devices and scattered our junk mail and lost our keys and ate our meals. All you have to do is boil it. I know how to make couscous, I told him, but wheat is off limits with the new program. Our apartment was filled with the meal's woody aroma, clove and paprika and the roasting flesh of a small, tender animal's hindquarters. Oven heat fogged David's glasses when he looked up from his laptop screen. Woogie, our large, temperamental cat, perched on a step stool between the kitchen and the dining room, which we never used. Woogie observed us always, as though watching TV he didn't much like anymore, but felt the need to see through to the finale. He was a very fluffy creature with long, soft orange fur and walrus whiskers. His appearance was far less serious than his personality, a fact I always felt a little sad about on his behalf. We sometimes joked that he was cursed, an old Norse wizard trapped in a cat's body. His ridiculous tail swooshed behind him with disinterest, pendulum-like, while he looked at me, his eyes almost closed, as though David and I were boring him to sleep. Taking the big knife from the block, I leaned over the cutting board next to the stove and put my full strength into chopping a tough, misshapen squash. Remind me of the rules for this diet. David stopped himself. This program again? I forget. I wiped my hands with a dish towel before passing him the hardcover copy of Way to Glow, Your Complete Guide to Wellness Through the Radiant Regimen. David pursed his lips as though he might complain, exaggerating the book's heft as he set it down next to his laptop. Please don't lose my page, I said as he began to examine the introduction of the book, titled, So What Can You Eat on the Radiant Regimen? This is intense, he said, frowning, really strict. Look at the benefits first, I said, not just the rules. Look at Diana Spargle's story. This gal? David said, turning the book over and tapping the photo of Diana Spargle, inventor and lead spokesperson of the Radiant Regimen and author of Way to Glow, along with 2 other best-selling companion books, Glow on the Go and Glow Up, Aging Gracefully with Healing Foods, on the back of the jacket. You lost my page, I told him, and don't say gown. Your recipe is on page 255, David said, still looking at the back of the book. I don't know why I said gown. I've never said that word before in my life. She must look gallish to you, I said, turning to him, a taunting smile on my face. I couldn't help myself. David prided himself on being somewhat less sexist than other men, and I never missed a chance to challenge him, to point out how this was, in its own twisted, nerdy way, a kind of condescending machismo. She looks like a nice lady, a nice woman, a woman person. He drew a circle with his finger around Spargle's face. She looks smart. She certainly does not look smart, I said. Maybe she looks nice, whatever that means. Don't overcompensate for calling her a gal on account of your own embarrassment. Diana Spargle, who indeed appeared to be glowing in her glossy author photo, with a golden brown suntan and loose waves of beachy blonde hair, was described in her bio as a naturopathic healer and nutrition expert. David read this sentence aloud, shrugged. I could tell he wanted to tease me a little, say the Radiant Regimen seemed pseudoscientific and entirely too extreme, but he didn't. He'd already agreed to do it. I'm gonna stop there.
I was applauding you over here. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Jamie.
This is really exciting. I'm so happy for you. I just want to give like a little background information about how I know Liv before we get started. Oh, I'm sorry. The dog's barking. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Should I go get him a treat or something like that? It's like he knows. Sit, get out of there. I love to come up with titles for books, and I came up with, like, my favorite title ever was Cheat Day. Like, I was like, I can't wait to write this book that is called Cheat Day. It's going to be amazing. And so excited to write it. And it's like 2 books from now, I'm going to write that book. And then what happens is, if you don't write it right away, then somebody gets a deal announcement and posts it on the internet. And you go, well, that was supposed to be my book. And I didn't know you at all. But I thought, well, now I have to befriend her immediately and find out about what's going on with this book. And I'm going to blurb your book. And I think I got like about a manuscript of it and was like, give it to me. And I loved it right away. So we were brought together by the title of this book. So tell us about the title of this book, if you don't mind.
No, I don't. It's so similar to your story. It was a title I always like wanted to use for a short story because I was a student and I was always writing short stories despite having not a lot of skill at that particular venture. And this title ended up being perfect for this book at a certain point while I was writing it. Not right away. I didn't at first. Oh my gosh, the first title for this book was First Marriage, but it had a completely different kind of premise at the end. And like the way it played out was totally different. I think, I played with a few titles, but then the element of the dieting ended up coming into probably not until the 3rd draft of this book, actually. And then I was like, this is my cheat day book. Yeah.
It's your cheat day book. And what is a cheat day?
So it's interesting, right? Because in the book, a cheat day means, not to spoil the book, but it is a book about an affair, and a cheat day means many things, right? But when I was working with it, I was thinking about the ways in which when a person is dieting, there's always the opportunity to take that day and just go nuts and eat whatever you want and restrict yourself later, under the premise, in a lot of ways, that you've been kind of so good, right? That's the way we talk about dieting, that now it's your chance to be bad, right? And like you hear this all the time when people talk about dieting, like, I can't have wine because I've been so bad lately. And so to me, a cheat day is a chance to be bad, is a chance to cheat, which has all sorts of problems if we're talking about diet culture.
I know, it's so fucked up, isn't it? It's
so
really fucked up.
Yeah.
I've certainly like dieted, like in the sense of cut back, right? Or like, I think I have a food allergy. So let me just like eliminate everything and then see what it is. And I've like literally never had a food allergy in my entire life. Like, I could eat every single thing ever put in front of me. There's not one thing that makes me feel bad, but I was like, I'm certain that I have one. So I feel like it's a hobby, dieting.
I absolutely think it's a hobby. And I absolutely think that, like, even the idea of like, oh, it's a food allergy, like it gives you a chance kind of to dip your feet in it. And when it's an allergy, then you don't have to feel, like a douchebag for being, for dieting, which like I am like, have been in so many points of my life, a total, dieting douchebag. I could tell you the amount of Weight Watchers points in just about anything you want to eat. And, and it's really messed up, and it's impossible to turn off, which you see in the book, play out to disastrous consequence, not with Weight Watchers, but with this fake diet I invented.
It's, you know what? The other day I asked somebody how many calories was in something, as if I wasn't going to eat it anyway. I was like, I don't know why I asked, just give that to me. Like, why do I even need to know?
Yeah.
It's going in my mouth.
Yeah,
like,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Is that I have knowledge. Make me feel bad later. Okay, so you and I had a little pre-call about this. So I want to talk about some of the things that we just said we were going to talk about, because that wasn't any of the things said we were going to talk about, but I realized listening to your reading, it made me think about it. I guess, although this sort of ties into it, so you're putting out something that you feel like you have like a knowledge of that dieting mentality, and it's about relationships. And I guess I'm wondering now, this is your first book, how how vulnerable is this experience for you? But also end this with something positive. Don't go dark. Bring it back to me.
You know, I kind of have a tendency to, if something makes me anxious, or if like the thoughts are like intrusive or troubling about it, and there's just nothing to be done, to like just push it, you know, and I tell myself that's future Liv's problem. And so that's what I told myself writing this book. And when the book sold, that's what I told myself, because there's a lot of really like intense stuff about dieting in the book. And I'm not the character, obviously, but like it's very clear that I have some innate knowledge, right, at this point of diet culture and dieting. And I just kept thinking to myself, like, well, it's going to be out there, and when it's out there, I'm going to worry about it. And so then the past few nights I've really started thinking like, oh wow, I've written this book that's a deeply intimate story, and people are going to read it and, you know, maybe think I'm perverted, maybe think I have really fucked up ideas about food, maybe, you know, and so it only recently have I felt like dread about that. But to put something good onto that, it's none of my business what other people think, as my grandmother used to tell me. So
there was like a tweet going around that I think it was like Sloane Crosley tweeted it, and it was about how when you're doing your edits, you should think about like the smartest, meanest person, as if the smartest, meanest person you know is reading it. And then somebody on top of that said, retweeted it and said, I actually only want people who love me. Like I only think about people loving me.
Yeah. I agree with the quote, or with the quoter. I don't agree that to imagine the person is mean. I play the believing game with readers.
Yeah, that people. Yeah, I mean, you can't please anybody. Like you don't know what. Like for me, I think about how. Like I don't go on Goodreads anymore, but I had this moment on Goodreads where I was like, I don't know what kind of day these people had before they got online, or when they picked up that book, or what they were looking for from a book. And they read the wrong review of it, or the cover made them think of something, it was going to be something that it wasn't. Like we don't know. And so we have to not take it too personally when it's not the thing that the reader wants it to be.
Yeah, it's definitely true. And I have learned the like don't go on Goodreads lesson recently, because it is, you know, like it just seems like there's this preponderance of people who are like, you know, this author condones cheating, or whatever they've extrapolated from this fictional novel. But of course, who knows, you know, what about that topic like really, you know, sent them to Goodreads that day. And, you know,
what sends anyone to Goodreads, really?
It's a great question.
Yeah. I like to track everything that I read so people know what I'm reading. And then I have you know, it's there for me, but that's really it. I don't know.
And it's great for that. It's perfect for that. You know, and then if you want to read a lot of user reviews, that feel really
well,
personal.
if you don't like somebody, if you don't like someone, it's really satisfying.
Yeah, then you can find out.
Okay. I'm also interested in, I mean, obviously this, like the food is described very lustily, and even the like bad food sort of, you know, or diet, not bad, but diet food, in my mind that's bad food.
Yeah.
Like as in taste bad. But in the diet food is sort of like written with like a certain kind of passion, even if it's a disdainful passion. You used to work in a bakery. You worked in a bakery for a long time. Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that experience a little bit?
Oh,
and
sure.
Yeah.
So I worked at Little Cupcake Bake Shop, which is, anyone who's been in there, it's completely obvious that Sweet Cheeks, the bakery in my book, is based off of Little Cupcake Bake Shop. I loved that job. It's one of those jobs that I probably would have done forever if I could work a job that like is really for a young person who can stay up really late at night, because bakeries in New York are open till really late. And I loved the smells. I loved how visceral it was. And so like writing about that was just like really easy. And I've learned how to describe all this fancy gourmet pastries. And so that, that went into the book, and it was this like kind of professional knowledge that I had on top of, being a writer, which I didn't feel very professional at when I was writing this book at all. that kind of went in. And so, and I kind of applied that to the gross food also, like for kids' sake, for the most part. Yeah.
And how, tell me how long it took you to write the book, and let's talk about the process behind it also.
So in 2014, when I started writing this book, I was working at Little Cupcake. I worked there. The reason it's hard to answer like how long I worked there is it was the place, it was like, you know, it was like that boyfriend that you keep going back to and being like, you're so fun, you know, and this, you know, and I love you so much, but like, you're not doing anything for me and I don't know where this is going, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Which obviously that job did a lot for me, but you know, it was just that I just always wanted to go back, even though like the hours were really tough for me and being on your feet gets tougher and tougher. So in 2014, when I started this book, and it wasn't set in the bakery in those early drafts, I was working at Little Cupcake, and it just made its way into the book at that point. And then, or probably like about 2016, at which point I was still working at the bakery. And then it kind of ended up getting set in 2016 because that was the point where I really fleshed out like a draft. But I just worked kind of on the book. I ended up working at Books for Magic after a little bit of time. I saw that this bookstore was opening in Brooklyn and I was like, that's what I want to do, you know? So I worked at Books for Magic and I was still writing the book. And so all told, it was probably 5 years. I thought maybe 5.5, but like 5 years.
Did you go to graduate school?
What? Yes, I did go to graduate school. And a wonderful, I went to UW-Madison, which was like a wonderful experience in which I accomplished nothing. But I did learn kind of how, I mean, the truth about Madison is that I just spent a lot of time partying and making great friends, but I did learn a lot about kind of who I wanted to be in the world and who I wanted to be as a writer there. So, and that was—
I feel like you've already come up with 2 good titles so far.
Tell me.
One is that I like is Future Liv. And the other one is The Truth About Madison.
I will write The Truth About Madison someday.
I like that.
I know a lot of people who will contribute essays to The Truth About Madison.
The Truth About Madison. But now, of course, Madison becomes a person in my mind.
Because it's perfect. It would be both. You should stop doing this because I'm just going to keep stealing your titles.
Okay. There's plenty to go around. Okay, and so now tell me about your actual writing process. Like what time of day you write, people love this kind of stuff. I am interested in it. And then also like, when was the moment where you're like, this book has liftoff? Like I'm writing it and I'm like, I know I've got something here.
That's like, yeah. So in terms of my process, it feels chaotic to me, but it's actually not. But a huge part of like who I am as a writer and who I am in the world is that I walk around a lot. I love to take walks. I get so much of, I think it's really common. I think like so many writers have that kind of, that's the thing we like to do, both for like exercise, if we're going to bother with that, but also just like moving through space at my own pace is so important to how my brain works. I know people who live in less walkable places that say driving kind of works the same way for them. But for me, it's very much like about like, you know, not just like taking these long walks through my neighborhood, which I do almost every day, but also just getting on the train. You know, I love to do that. I love to overhear things as I'm working on my own work and the way it goes in. I'm always like stopping to take notes. So, I mean, my process has a ton to do with that. It has a lot more to do with that than it does to actually like getting my ass in the chair to write, which takes me a really long time to get to the point where I sit in the chair and write. And when I do that, I do it in huge bursts. You know, I wrote the whole third part of Cheat Day. I wrote in like 3 weeks in the winter of 2018. And like, and I'd somehow gotten into that zone and I flew into it, you know, and it like whole cloth, it came out that way. But that was after like a lot of walking and a lot of thinking and, you know, writing down little notes and laughing at myself on the subway and looking like a maniac, you know.
Did you have a moment where you were like, I had to fucking finish this book?
Yeah, I did. And it's because I was working at the bookstore and I was getting to be around all these authors who I would talk to, and they were wonderful. And so many of them were generous, and so many of them were, really kind-hearted. And they would talk to me while they were, signing their stack of books. And the thing they always kept saying was like, well, finish it. And then I really started to feel like, what am I doing? Why is this taking, 4 years? Like, if I finish this, then there'll be plenty. The other thing that everyone said, and I was working for a writer who told me this, Emma told me this, but like, just finish it, because there's so much work to do. You have no idea how much work there is to do after you've finished it and it goes to someone else. And so that really motivated me too, was kind of people who were on the other side of it being like, don't even worry. Like, don't even worry about how perfect it is. Get it finished. An agent will help you, get it close. And then you'll basically write a whole different version of it with an editor, especially for a debut. So like, it was really being at Books Are Magic that got me to being like, oh, these people are all doing the thing I've been saying my whole life I want to do, and I'm just messing around,
It's for sure two things. One, I think working in a bookstore is a really wonderful experience. And then I worked in a bookstore after I'd already published books, and it's saved me. Yeah. Just to see, because I think when you put books out there for a while, you sort of lose track, because it becomes about like how many books you're selling, that kind of thing. And then to be able to go and work in a bookstore again, it was like, oh, it's actually just about these people who love books and reading, talking about books, being excited about books, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I miss working in a bookstore. It's a great job for a writer. Yeah.
Liv, let's open a bookstore. You and me, we'll open a bookstore. Done. Come down to New Orleans. No, you like New York though.
I do like New York, but I mean, yeah, I haven't been to New Orleans. I could love New Orleans. We don't know yet.
It's really nice here, except so hot in the summer. Yeah. And hurricanes.
That's what I keep hearing.
And stuff like that. But I don't know. But it's like, if you like walking around, it's like the greatest city. I mean, I would say come down and walk, go for a good walk here. It's just so much fun. The houses are so beautiful. Okay. We have about 8 minutes left before we start doing Q&A. And so I want to talk about writing about sex and love and intimacy and all that kind of stuff. Can I read from your book, a sex scene from your book?
Yeah, cue porn groove.
It's not like sloppy. Okay. I took a step closer to him and put 3 fingers into the elastic of his boxers, moving slowly between cloth and skin. Oh, that isn't why I came over, I said. All the things we might have said to deepen the conversation fell away. I put my mouth open on his chest. He was so much taller than I was. It was as close to his neck as I could reach unless he bent down. He let out an almost inaudible moan of pleasure as I slipped my hand all the way inside his underwear. Then he leaned down to kiss me. We kissed for a long time before moving to the bedroom without speaking. I went to climb onto the bed, but he took my arm and gently turned me back toward him. He shut the bedroom door with his foot. Even though he lived alone, he always closed the door when we had sex. His fingers trembled as he undid my polka dot button-down top, a shirt I kept only because Melissa hated it and complained with real exasperation every time I wore it. It was a horrible mustardy brown shape. You had to go into the, I hate the shirt I'm wearing. And the black polka dots were, in her opinion, ostentationally large. I'm going to stop soon. Matt unhooked my bra and kissed the top of my chest. We were both shaking by the time he'd fully undressed me. In the bed, I thought I was going to come right away. I asked him if we could stop for a second. He said, okay, and I could tell how difficult it was for him to slow down. It was always like this, instinctual and visceral.
I didn't write that. That's so horny. Who wrote that horny shit?
You're horny.
So the thing about, I remember, so in undergrad, I took creative writing workshop with Brock Clark, and he liked to tell us that sex only works in fiction if it's embarrassing for at least one person involved. And I believed that for a long time. And then I kind of realized it could also work if it's embarrassing for the reader, right? So I kind of like amended that it didn't have to necessarily be embarrassing for the characters, but it had to embarrass someone, right?
I think it's good if it embarrasses Brock, actually.
I hope it does, I should email him. So I ended up
it's surprising because like people like Brock and other professors I had when I was like a young writer in undergrad would be shocked to like see, will be shocked to see how horny this book is and how horny my writing has become. But, you know, I think it's a really kind of a fun way to add tension, right? Like writing and plot are all about tension, and there, you know, there's nothing more tense than like really wanting to do it. And so I just went with it. I also like, you know, I read a lot of the books I love have sex that's embarrassing for the characters or the reader. And so, you know, all the writers, you know, listening know that like you want to do justice to the books that you've loved, you know.
I think it's really fun to write bad sex, but I do like to write all kinds of scenes. Bad sex is like fun. You know, always it just should be, I think, about you learning about the characters.
Right.
You know, like it's the same as how they eat, or, you know, what kind of books are on their bookshelf, or, you know, it's just another way. It's another way in. And Americans are so uncomfortable talking about sex.
That's true.
Still to this day. But writing about sex is different, I think, than writing about love and intimacy. And clearly, and especially in this book where it's like,
yeah.
Does it make you feel more or less uncomfortable to write about sex versus love? Or,
you know, it's so interesting because they're so distinct in my mind. And like writing about sex is this like messy, can be very gross, can be like done very over, you know, melodramatically, just like love, like activity, right? Whereas love is really, it can be really hard to write about and really hard to show, even though it's also like can be really gross and messy and but they seem so separate in my mind. I definitely think sex is easier, but I do love to write about love. And I think I loved to write about love because it is so hard to know a relationship unless you're in it. And so like really getting into, you know, it's really getting into like the sense of a person's struggles in their relationship. Like for Kit, it's very much like, you know, this love that's almost like very intellectual, that's very domestic, that's very much a part of her lived experience, versus this attraction, this just like kind of like visceral attraction. And obviously I play with that having to do with food and you know, eating when you're hungry and that kind of thing. But writing about love, I think, is much more an exploration of the unknown, right, than sex.
It's all about things that you put in your mouth, right, Liv?
Mostly.
Okay, well, we can like jump into the questions, because I see somebody asked this in the chat, which is, and then we'll look at the other Q&A questions. But what books do you love that have sex in them?
So that's a great question. And this is embarrassing, but Jami's are really good at writing sex. She's really good at writing embarrassing sex. And I definitely kept a copy of your book, All Grown Up, on the desk when I was revising my sex scenes, because you're really good at writing about sex. So if you're interested in reading sex in fiction and haven't read Jami's work yet, that's one of very many reasons to read it. A huge fan. I also, and you can get it from Books Are Magic, just saying. You could do it tonight. You know, recently there's been a lot of talk about Melissa Broder. I really like Melissa Broder. If you read Milkfed and The Pisces, both those books are full of just the most degrading sex. But it's really fun. It's really fun and really funny. So always recommend Melissa Broder. Sally Rooney is really good at sex. I actually think that's Sally Rooney's thing, is sexual tension. You know, when you read those books, they're very quiet and understated. And I think without how good this is not, I think that she's a phenomenal writer, but I think without how good she is at writing about sex and desire, it would be really hard to talk about what her books are about. Yeah, so.
Do you think women are better at writing about sex than men?
Absolutely. And it's also about like how, you know, who has to become good at sex to enjoy it, like but I also just think women are better than men. Can I say that? Is that too controversial?
No.
Okay.
You can say that. I agree with you.
Yeah, I can't think of a male writer who I'm like, wow, these sex scenes are so good. So
I have to think about it. I'll have to get back to you.
Yeah.
I feel like I remember reading that James Salter book and being kind of, when they have sex with the pillow.
I don't know this one.
What was that James Salter book? Someone's going to remember in the chat. You know, the one.
Somebody tell us. I don't know.
Somebody tell us what that famous, A Day in the something. I can't remember what it's called. It's like a really famous James Salter book, but I can't remember the titles of anything anymore. I can only when I use my brain, i.e. the computer.
Yeah, the Oracle.
I don't remember anything anymore, but what is that James Salter? Come on, people. All right. Anyway, there's a James Salter book, Sport and the Pastime. Thank you. Yeah.
Anna coming through, of course.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Claudia Ballard, also.
All the greats coming through with the answer.
Right. I'm just, I'm very caught up in the sex scene I just read. Okay, wait. So then, Chris, I'm going to look at the Q&A. Christina Powers also says, share your taste in reading. What have you enjoyed recently? And what are some future releases you are excited about?
So my taste in reading is pretty varied, which I think if you were an English major, that's typically the case. I read a lot. I tend to not read like fantasy, but you never know. There's a few I really like The Parable of the Sower. So, I do love really psychologically complex books. I love stories. I love divorce stories, all that kind of thing. My favorite writers are Lori Moore, Mavis Gallant, Jami. I could go on about that. And then right now I'm reading a lot of other debuts. I started this support group for debut writers. And then I'm meeting all these really cool people and wanting to read their books also. So I just started a book called Yes, Daddy by Jonathan Parks Ramage. And it's really surprising based on what it looks like and kind of what you think it's going to be about, what it's about, but it's kind of a gothic horror set in the gay Hamptons. And I've just started it. Yeah. It's great. Yeah. It's this young struggling playwright meets this older, really successful playwright, and they fall into this affair. And that's where I am right now. And, but I know that he gets invited out into the Hamptons, and all sorts of kind of not haunted, but all sorts of psychological torture and hijinks ensue.
Can you talk more about the support group?
Yeah. I just got on Twitter one day. I was lonely. I was nervous. I felt like I had no idea what was happening. And I got on Twitter one day and was like, I was reading that book, Before and After the Book Deal, and by Courtney Mom. And one of the things she talked about was, I like that book. I think it's got a lot of really great, really important information that I didn't have, that I was grateful for. But one of the things she said was, it'll be hard to talk to other writers whose books are coming out at the same time as you, even though you'd want to, because their experience is so similar, because they're essentially your competition in the market. And I just kind of disagreed and thought, wait a minute, this is my cohort, this is my class, just the way my MFA people were. And so I just got on Twitter and said, hey, if you're publishing a book, a first or second novel, in 2021, 2022, and now it's gone into 2023. This is going to be my new career, right, is running this support group. DM me and let me know if you want to join this group. But it's almost 100 people now. And I write a newsletter for it, and we get on Slack. I put it on Slack because I don't have Slack on my phone, so I have to seek it out. And we share information and we commiserate, and I've met a lot of friends. It's cool. So.
Liv, that is so good. That is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
I've read so many great books, and books that I would have been too wrapped up in my own dumb shit, and how, I'd just be Googling myself at home or whatever. And instead I'm talking to other people who are also trying to avoid Googling themselves. So
you should write about this.
I know. Emily Temple at Lit Hub like invited me to write about it, and I felt like too much like I was like, tooting my own horn. But it is something I want to talk about because it's been so great, and I like really have met friends, like true
You
friends.
should write it. It's
Okay.
nice because it'll just encourage other people to do stuff like it. It's about like, it's not about you're great, although that's great that you did that, but it's more about like, here are the lessons that I learned, and here's okay. I'll bug you about it. I just bug you about things every so often now, Liv.
I love
I'm just
it
going to
though.
keep doing
It's
that.
great. It's like I have a conscience because I don't otherwise just have anything going on.
Okay, so the next question is, are there any elements of the finished draft that would surprise past Liv, like a character, plotline, or subject made its way into the book that you didn't expect would be there?
No. I don't know. It's probably too good of a question, so I can't answer it, right? When I think about the book now, it feels like so so whole and so one thing to me. But it is true that like the first draft of this didn't have anything about diet culture, and now it's now half the book's about diet culture. So that was surprising at a certain point when I started doing it, but not anymore. I don't know the book, and like people who read the book who know me really well, they have not been surprised.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. All right. Let's see. You said a little bit about the earlier version of this book, First Marriage. Can you say, oh, that's the same. Can you say more about what changed between that and the book's final form? I mean, did you try other points of views or that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the first book had three parts like this book, but one part was from Kit's point of view, one part was from Matt's point of view, and one part was from David's point of view, with the last part all taking place on a work trip that David was on. So it's like so different. And I was trying to do something so different. And also Matt gets hit by a bus and dies at the end of part 2 in the first book. And I don't even think my agent has seen that. Like I wrote this whole thing that like, and then, but then, like early readers who were friends, my undergraduate mentor, Leah Stewart, read it and was like, what you have is the beginning of the ideas for a novel, but not, you're not, this doesn't flow, and I ended up deciding to stick with Kit and go into first person because voice is something, you might be able to tell just by the volume at which I speak, voice is something that's really, I'm good at, and like, so, and I had fun with it. So I just stuck with her.
All right, we have time for a couple more questions here. It looks like you have 2 people who are asking about humor in your writing. Do you have any advice about writing humor?
Yeah.
And can you talk about the role of it in your writing or any of your comedic inspirations?
Yeah. So the first thing about humor is that you have to be funny. Don't try to write something funny if you don't out in the world make people laugh, right? It's so tied to like who I am. But I'm somebody who is from I don't know, like the young, my mom could probably go in the chat and tell us how long it's, but I don't do that, Mom. I just kidding. I have always been somebody who wanted to make people laugh. And when I did make people laugh, it was the best thing ever. And so it just went into my writing because, didn't when I was young, like in college writing, because I thought everything good had to be really serious and, kind of melodramatic because I was really young. But as I became who I am as a writer right now, that just kind of worked itself in because I was trying to, write true things. And for me, everything is like really absurd and ridiculous. And even when it's horrible, it's funny, and there's some of what's funny in this book is not like funny to me personally at all. Right. Like, I don't think like, like the character Angelo has some like issues with race, right? That like Kit doesn't really know how to talk to him about. And it ends up being kind of funny, these conversations they have, but I don't think that's funny, I definitely don't think it's funny that Kit is essentially, starving herself by the end of the book, but it is really funny in the book, so it's that kind of thing. Now my friends are pretending to be my mom.
Well, you know, I just think if you wait long enough, anything's funny.
Yeah, that's true. Right. What else are you going to do except laugh?
Well, that's a really good place to end it, Liv. Congratulations on your
Thank you,
book.
Jami. Thank you so
Your
much.
big debut that was in People magazine, which is very
Thank
fancy.
you for telling me to post about that, because I didn't want to, and it is really cool.
It's a bit, yeah, it's kind of a big deal. It's a really big deal.
Yeah.
And look at all the people in the chats who are congratulating you. Yay. Next time, hopefully for your paperback, you can do an in-person event. That would be great.
Yeah, that would be really fun. So,
okay.
all right.
Thanks for having me.